Welcome to Medieval History Firsthand. Tonight, we ask the question, could you survive 24 hours as a medieval farmer? Stay tuned to find out. Dawn breaks cold and grey over the English countryside. The rooster crows, but it's not needed. Your body is already tuned to the rhythm of light. Sleep ends the moment the first haze of day bleeds into your one-room wattle and daub home. You rise from the straw mattress, shared with your wife and two youngest children, joints aching from yesterday's labor. The floor is dirt, the ceiling low-beamed oak. There's no privacy, no indulgence, just survival. Your breakfast is predictable: cold ale, coarse rye bread, and a ladle of yesterday's pottage, a stew of onions, turnips, and bitter herbs, cooked down over several days until it becomes more paste than soup. If you're lucky, there might be a shred of bacon or dried fish in it, though meat is rare. Your teeth ache from chewing the stone-flecked bread, ground with millstones that drop flakes of grit into every bite. Work begins before the sun clears the hills. If it's spring, you're ploughing, guiding a wooden aratrum pulled by oxen through sodden soil. If it's summer, you're weeding or chasing birds from the fields. In autumn, you harvest barley and rye with a sickle, bent for hours under the punishing sun. Winter means mending tools, slaughtering livestock, or hauling firewood from the forest. Each season commands your body differently, but each day demands all of it. To the medieval farmer, the year was not divided by clocks or appointments, but by the demands of the earth. Time was circular, governed by sun, soil, saints, and seed. Every month bore its own duties, and each task had to be completed at the precise moment ordained by centuries of trial and error. Delay meant hunger in the cold months to come. January, midwinter. The land lies frozen and bare. Most fieldwork halts, but men mend fences, sharpen plowshares, and thatch roofs battered by storms. Firewood is hauled daily, often through snow. Women spin wool by candlelight, patch clothes, and prepare dried herbs. This is also the time for manorial dues, when peasants must deliver grain, eggs, or labor to the local lord. The days are short, dark, and filled with prayers for a mild spring. February, Candlemas, and preparation. Though still cold, signs of the coming season emerge. Candlemas, February 2nd, marks a sacred moment when candles are blessed for the year ahead. Plough. Monday, the first Monday after Epiphany, sees symbolic ploughing, sometimes with ploughs decorated and paraded to church. Men begin repairing carts and harnesses, while women tend to root vegetables in storage and begin sewing flax or hemp indoors for future cloth. March. The first. Ploughing. Spring stirs the soil. Oxen are yoked, and men return to the fields to break the earth. Barley, oats, and peas are sown by hand, scattered in arcs over the ploughed furrows. Lambing begins in earnest. Any loss now is a blow to future wool and meat. This is a hopeful time, but also treacherous. Frosts still threaten the seed, and too much rain can rot the work. April. Sowing and weeding. Fields must be constantly watched. Weeds are pulled by hand. Beans are planted now, as are onions and leeks in kitchen plots. Hedges are repaired to keep animals out. Lent restricts diet. No meat, only fish and pottage. Easter is a moment of spiritual and social renewal. On rare occasions, farmers receive gifts of eggs or ale from the manor lord to mark the holy day. May, shearing and garden work. With warmer days come heavier tasks. Sheep are herded and shorn, their wool cleaned and stored for spinning. Gardens need constant attention. Lettuce, cabbage, garlic, and herbs flourish if well tended. Ditches are dug to improve drainage. Some villages begin brewing the year's first batches of fresh ale. May Day, May 1st, brings dancing and temporary joy, but it is brief. There's still much to be done. June. Haymaking. The first major harvest of the year begins. Meadows are cut by hand with scythes. Hay must be dried and stacked before the rain comes. Every able-bodied person helps. This is also a month for watching over livestock and fencing pasture. Bees are tended, and some honey is gathered. The sun is long, and so are the days. Labor stretches from dawn to twilight. July, weeding and watching. Fields of grain ripen slowly under the sun. Too little rain and the harvest will fail. Too much, and mildew sets in. Men stand watch with slings or clappers to frighten off birds. The second shearing of sheep may happen if the season is mild. More herbs are gathered and dried for winter. Peasants begin saving fuel for the colder months. August, harvest, the most grueling and vital month of the year. Grain must be cut with sickles, bound into sheaves, and hauled into barns. It is back-breaking work, up to 16 hours a day, bent under the sun. Every hand helps. Women, children, even the elderly. Fail here, and winter becomes a sentence. Lammas Day, August 1st, marks the first loaf of the new grain and is celebrated with solemn gratitude. September, threshing and winnowing. Now comes the processing. Sheaves are beaten with flails to loosen the grain, which is then thrown into the air so the wind can carry away the chaff. Grain is stored in barrels or sacks, protected from damp and rodents. Apples and nuts are gathered. Root vegetables are lifted. The year begins to close in. Michaelmas, September 29th, signals the end of harvest. Rents and taxes are paid. October, slaughter and preservation. This is the time for butchery. Animals that cannot be fed through winter are slaughtered. Pork is salted and smoked. Sausages are hung. Tallow is rendered for candles. Wood is chopped daily. Women pickle onions, boil jam, and dry beans. It's a month of smell, blood, smoke, herbs, and decay mingling in the crisp air. November, the last tasks. Only hardy vegetables remain in the field, cabbages, leeks, and turnips. Final repairs to walls and roofs are made. Firewood is stacked higher. Fowl are culled. St. Martin's Day, November 11th, is a last feast before the long quiet. Advent approaches. The earth grows quiet again. December, darkness and prayer. You do what you can indoors. Spin, carve, bake, and pray. The winter solstice passes. Christmas is celebrated with music, church bells, and perhaps a roast goose, if the harvest was kind. Candlelight, storytelling, and holy days fill the silence of the year's end. Religion defines time itself. The church bell tolls the canonical hours. Matins, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. 7 sacred stops in your day. Your life is measured in saints' days and feast days. There are more than 50 feast days where labor is forbidden, offering respite. Christmas and Easter are the holiest, but you also honor local saints, pilgrimage days, and festivals like Michaelmas, Harvest's End, and Candlemas, Midwinter Blessing. Feast days are rare joys. You may attend a mass, share bread and ale with neighbors, and perhaps even see a puppet show or hear music. Children chase one another, women trade herbs and wool, and men challenge each other at wrestling or archery. These days lift the spirit, though the work lost must be made up quickly. Feast days don't erase hunger or debt, they merely pause them. Yeram, the home of a medieval farmer, was not a place of comfort, but of necessity. It was built for survival, shaped by scarcity, climate, and the traditions of those who came before. A typical peasant house, whether in England, France, or the German states, was a crude construction of wattle and daub, flexible sticks woven together into panels, plastered with a sticky mixture of clay, straw, animal dung, and mud. The roof, thatched with reeds or straw, was thick enough to insulate, but often swarmed with lice, mice, or birds. Rain could seep through it in heavy storms. In winter, frost crept in through every gap. The floor was packed dirt, never paved, sometimes strewn with rushes, sometimes left bare. Over time, the trodden filth of feet, spilled food, and dung from indoor animals compacted it into something like earth-hardened stone. It had no insulation. Cold rose from the floor in winter, just as heat vanished through the open eaves. There were no chimneys in most peasant homes until the 14th or 15th centuries. Instead, smoke from the hearth, set in the center or against a wall, rose freely through a hole in the roof, or more commonly, through the thatch or poorly sealed rafters. The result was a constant haze of wood smoke within the home, which darkened the walls and ceiling and left every garment, blanket, and lung saturated with soot. Children and elderly who lived too close to the hearth were often plagued by respiratory infections and eye problems. But without that smoke, the family would freeze, and so they tolerated the haze as part of life. Most peasant homes were single-room dwellings, shared by the entire family. There was no privacy. The parents, children, infants, and sometimes grandparents all slept in the same space, often in a row, side by side, on pallets of straw or rushes, maybe with some wool or linen stuffed into sacks if they were lucky. The bed was little more than a blanket on the floor. Blankets were handmade, expensive and difficult to replace. In winter, every available body huddled together for warmth. Many families would bring in a goat, pig, or even chickens to sleep near the hearth on cold nights. This was not uncommon. It was pragmatic. Livestock were precious property, and warmth meant survival. There were no windows as we know them today, perhaps a single hole in the wall, covered with parchment or a wooden shutter. Glass was too expensive and reserved for the wealthy. As a result, most homes were dark even during the day. The only illumination came from the central fire or tallow candles, thick, foul-smelling tapers made from rendered animal fat. These candles smoked heavily, sputtered in drafts, and were rationed. Often, families used rushlights instead, reeds soaked in grease and set aflame one end at a time. The poor learned to live by twilight. Furnishings were minimal and homemade: a wooden bench, a three-legged stool, a rough table of planks, maybe a single chest with iron fittings, used to store the family's most valuable items, tools, clothes, or a saint's relic. Shelving, if it existed, was just a slab of wood nailed to the wall. Hooks held cloaks and hats. A shelf above the hearth might support drying herbs or small icons. Every surface was multi-purpose. The table was for eating, sewing, slaughtering, praying, and placing the dead. Space was not wasted. It was simply unavailable. The kitchen was not a separate space. It was the fire pit, the hearth. A single blackened cauldron hung from an iron hook or sat on stones within the flames. Food was boiled more often than baked. Ovens were rare. Those that existed were typically communal, shared within the village. Women simmered pottage endlessly, refilling it with water, cabbage, leeks, herbs, and occasional meat if fortune allowed. Bread, if made at home, was unleavened or poorly risen. Most flour was coarse and full of grit, ground with millstones that chipped bits of stone into the dough. Over time, this ruined teeth, especially for those already weakened by malnutrition. Storage was as clever as it was sparse. Dried beans and peas hung in bunches from the rafters. Clay jars held fat, pickled vegetables, and milk. Cheese was wrapped in cloth. Salt, if owned, was kept in a pouch or pot and guarded carefully. Grain was stored in sacks, barrels, or elevated bins, away from rats if possible, though rats came regardless. A farmer's wife might keep a small linen bag of herbs tucked into a beam, both for cooking and as medicine. Toilets didn't exist. Waste was disposed of in pits, dung heaps, or hedgerows. In towns, it might be thrown into open drains. In rural areas, it was dumped into the fields or collected for composting. Chamber pots were common but crude and emptied in the morning. The smell clung to everything, especially in summer. Hygiene, however, is practical at best. You wipe with moss, leaves, or your hand. washed in a stream if time permits. Chamber pots are used at night and emptied into ditches or compost. Lice are normal. You have a comb specifically to remove them. You smell like sweat, smoke, soil, and livestock. So does everyone else. You hardly notice. Soap, if used, is made from lye and ashes and stings the skin. Religion is not just belief, it's the framework of your world. You pray before meals, during storms, and before planting. The village priest is literate, perhaps the only one you know who is. He teaches you about heaven, sin, and hellfire. Most of what you know comes from sermons and stories. You've never read a Bible, it's in Latin. But you fear God, honor saints, and live your life by the rhythm of their demands. Your children are workers from the moment they can walk. Your eldest son helps plow or herd pigs. Your daughters fetch water, gather eggs, and tend the hearth. There is no school unless a monastery takes them. Most learn only what you teach them, how to till soil, grind grain, butcher animals, and stitch clothing. By age 12, a child is nearly an adult. Your wife works as hard as you, often harder. She cooks over open flame, tends the garden, weaves wool, raises chickens, and births your children with no midwife save her mother or neighbor. She makes candles from tallow and washes clothing in the river, breaking ice in winter to do so. She's your partner in everything, and though she has no legal rights, her labor holds the household together. Evenings are short and dark. After the day's toil, you patch fences, fix tools, or churn butter. If time allows, you mend your tunic, carve new handles, or tell stories by the fire. Hobbies are practical: whittling, brewing, basket weaving, playing a flute if one was inherited. You don't relax as modern people would understand it. Leisure must justify itself. It must serve the body, the household, or the soul. Your diet is monotonous. It revolves around bread and pottage, occasionally fish or cheese. During Lent or fast days, nearly 1/3 of the year, you abstain from meat. Beer is your hydration, made weak but brewed clean. You drink up to 6 or 8 pints per day, even your children. Fruit is eaten in season. Nuts and honey are rare treats. Food is survival, not pleasure. Your body shows the years, though you're only in your mid-30s. Sun-leathered skin, missing teeth, a bad back, and calloused hands mark your passage. Most of your friends have already buried children. You fear disease, famine, and fire more than war. A simple cough could end your life. Medicine is superstition, infusions of nettle, leeches, prayers. You pray harder when a fever comes. Often, it doesn't help. Yet even with such conditions, a medieval farmer's home was full of life. It rang with noise, children playing, livestock bleating, dogs barking at night. There were moments of warmth and joy, a newly baked loaf, a crackling fire, a prayer before bed, the laughter of kin. The hearth was a place of gathering, not just cooking. Stories were told there, of saints, ancestors, and distant kings. Songs were sung, hands were warmed, wounds were tended. The home may have been poor, but it was alive. For the medieval peasant, a home was a fortress against the cold and the wolves, a womb for the family line, and a church in miniature. Above the hearth, many households kept a wooden cross or painted icon, a sprig of holly at Christmas, a woven charm for St. Bridget. In times of plague or famine, the people would kneel and pray here, surrounded by smoke and silence, hoping that heaven would hear them over the noise of suffering. And when one of them died, and many did, the body would lie in the same room, watched over by candles, a crucifix, and grieving kin. They were born in this house, lived in it, toiled in it, and left it only when called by death. It was more than shelter. It was everything. Night falls, and you eat by candlelight. Bread, ale, and silence. Your wife spins wool by firelight, while you repair a boot sole. You speak little. Words are saved for necessity. You thank God aloud for the day, for the harvest, for your family's health. Then you collapse onto straw, muscles throbbing, soot clinging to your skin. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, and so will you. A medieval farmer's life was not cinematic. It was hard, repetitive, fragile, and short. It required immense knowledge of seasons, of soil, of animals, and of God. Every action, from sowing to praying, was a hedge against disaster. Yet within that hardship was a strange constancy, a harmony with the land and its eternal cycles. Life was brutal, but understood. Time passed slowly. Days were measured by the plough's groove and the church's bell, and though death was never far, neither was purpose. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Medieval History Firsthand. If you like this video, click on one of the videos on your screen now to watch more. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Medieval History Firsthand, where history is brought to life.